香港就係一個步伐好快嘅城市，好多嘅事物咧，轉眼間就會消失咗。我就開始年紀越嚟越大啦，懷緬嘅心情咧就越嚟越多啦。咁啊，好希望將城市裏邊嘅嘢，甚至我哋童年所見過嘅事物咧，全部都一一想保留。咁根本冇可能留得住嘅。咁所以咧，我就好希望咧，就利用我嘅能力，就用呢個微型製作而做翻佢出嚟，咁再呈現翻大家嘅眼前。
Sanpo Kong is an industrial area in Hong Kong's Kowloon district. Rents are relatively cheap here. Among units that were built to be used as factories or warehouses, many are lent out as artist studios. Tony Lai has his studio on Sanpo Kong's Tai Yao Street. It's only 20 square meters in area, but he spends most of his day here, creating his own unique world with miniature models. The craft of miniature model making originated in Germany in the early 18th century. It involved the reduction and reproduction of actual or described scenes in the real world. As they could vividly recreate and preserve real-life scenes, miniature model craftsmen were patronized by royals and nobles. Their work was much sought after, and their craft soon spread across the world. In the northwestern part of Hong Kong's Kowloon Peninsula, Sham Shui Po is comparatively poor, but also one of the densest and most vibrant neighborhoods in Hong Kong. Old traditional shops with their characteristic hanging signboards jockeying for attention are cluttered among the skyscrapers. Lai often roams the streets here in search of inspiration.
俾杯24味啊！係咪古傳秘方啊？
都係啦。
Old-fashioned herbal tea shops, popular cafes and cheap barber shops that have disappeared. Every miniature model created by Tony Lai recreates the old Hong Kong hidden behind the modern bustling city, a shared memory of local people. Recently, Lai received an invitation to contribute to a miniature model exhibition with nostalgic themes about Hong Kong. He plans to bring back the long-vanished Mount Davis squatter village.
喺我童年嘅時候咧，咁我爸爸就帶我去南丫島，就要喺中環坐船，經過嘅路線咧，啱啱就係去到呢個摩星嶺木屋區對開嗰個位置。咁當時喺船上邊見到嘅摩星嶺咧，就覺得好神奇啦，好似見到一個小人國咁樣。有人邀請我哋去參加個展覽，嗰陣時個腦海咧，即係呈現翻以前見過摩星嶺嘅情景啊。咁就開始就想起要做呢個作品啦。
Before a miniature model craftsman starts work on a piece, he will choose a scene or structure he wishes to recreate. If it still exists, then finishing the model will be relatively easy. But if the thing being modelled no longer exists, it's much harder. Before starting work on his new model, Tony Lai visits the now abandoned site of the Mount Davis squatter village repeatedly to conduct investigations.
我哋見到咧就係村民行嘅樓梯嘅痕跡嚟嘅。咁我哋見到咧佢由下邊，甚至我相信係由最低層嘅懸崖邊嘅木屋咧，一路伸延到上去上邊。嗱，你見到馬路就喺前邊嘅。就係方便啲村民咧，由每一層通往上邊嘅馬路啦。嗱，依啲咧就係可以睇翻以前木屋嘅痕跡啦。咁大概都係木屋嘅地台啊。依個斜度咧係好斜嘅，但係佢就喺個斜坡上邊起到好多層嘅木屋喺上邊咯，所以咧好壯觀嘅望過去嗰陣時係。好可惜咧，就係去到現場木屋嘅痕跡已經冇晒㗎啦。只係留翻個山坡同埋建築物嘅地形，對於我製作嚟講呢，資料係唔夠嘅，相當之有難度啦。
Now that he has conducted on-site surveys and assembled as many photographic and graphic records as he can, Lai must decide on an appropriate scale. Usually, the scale of miniatures is 1 to 12.
如果我哋做到1:12嘅話咧，你只可能喺1米範圍之內咧，你可能係只可以做到一個單位嘅木屋。佢始終摩星嶺嘅特色就係層次嘅木屋群。咁所以咧，我就將佢個比例縮細到1:50去呈現出嚟，咁我就可以做到佢個層次啦，一級級嘅木屋群啊。咁如果你單獨做一間木屋，你表達唔到摩星嶺嗰個特色出嚟嘅。
Starting work on his model, Lai begins with the base of the mountain. He cuts a piece of white plastic board into various shapes. Then he puts together the different pieces he's cut to fashion the body of the mountain. The mountain base consists of 4 layers. Just like the foundation of a real building, it's critical to get the size and proportion of the base right. The smallest deviation may spoil the entire piece. Lai then creates the mountain slopes by attaching rectangular pieces of different sizes to the base. Once the base is complete, the next step is to create the texture of the mountain surface. Selection of materials is particularly important for miniature models. If a craftsman can't find materials that faithfully mimic the real thing being modelled, the quality of the piece will suffer directly.
咁摩星嶺呢個地形呢，就比較複雜嘅。開始揾材料嘅時候，我就會出去外邊呢，周圍去逛逛啊，睇下有咩材料可以用得到啦。咁好突然呢，我就去到呢個金魚街。咁經過一間鋪頭門口呢，就會掛咗兩塊好大型嘅樹皮喺度。開始一見到嘅時候，咦，佢嘅凹凸紋真係好似呢個摩星嶺懸崖嗰啲石形啊，係一模一樣喎。咁所以咧，我就即刻將呢塊樹皮咧買咗翻嚟先，跟住就開始諗下點樣將樹皮黐上去個呢個底盤上邊啦。
Lai uses hot melt glue to attach the bark to the base. The mountain base for the squatter village model has now been completed. Mount Davis lies at the westernmost end of Hong Kong Island, separated from Tsing Chau Island by the Sulphur Channel. When looking across to the islands of Lama, Chung Chau and Lantau to the northwest, visitors can enjoy a beautiful seascape. Far away, connecting Lantau Island with the Kowloon Peninsula, the magnificent Tsing Ma suspension bridge is also visible. The best time to enjoy the view is at sunset. To local Hong Kongers, Mount Davis's geography and disposition endow it with excellent feng shui. Many wealthy families live here. The coastal area at its foot, where the squatter village used to be, has become a waste transfer station, and a deep cave has been dug into the mountain. Tony Lai was born into an ordinary Hong Kong family in 1966. As a teenager, he was a member of the territory's youth football team. Until 1990, he studied design in Tokyo. Then he returned home to become an architectural modeler, specializing in making models of commercial buildings. At the time, such small-scale reproductions were created by hand, without the assistance of computers and machinery. 2 decades in the job have made Lai an experienced model maker with skillful hands. In 2003, the Hong Kong property market crashed. Local developers sought opportunities in the Chinese mainland. Tony Lai also moved to the mainland with his company.
每一日落班嘅時間，我哋香港嘅員工呢就冇娛樂嘅喺上邊。每一日我都留喺個公司裏邊啦。咁就開始咧就用剩落嚟嘅材料咧，就去做自己興趣嘅作品啦。咁就有啲朋友就見到，有冇興趣同我哋一齊去參加一個懷舊香港事物嘅微縮展覽啊咁樣。咁我就覺得好有意思啦。當時個展覽咧，主題就係消失中香港嘅情景，就係想返我開始第一份工作嘅時候。咁當時我就喺灣仔上班嘅，每日都會經過呢個和昌大廈，咁就非常之深刻印象。
Wu Cheong Pawn Shop, located on Johnston Road in Wan Chai district, was first built in 1888. 4 stories high, it's one of the oldest pawn shops in Hong Kong. In 2007, the government worked with private institutions to invest 15 million Hong Kong dollars in the building's renovation, turning it into a new local landmark with dining and entertainment functions.
實際呢個建築物咧仲存在嘅，咁我甚至去現場，去過好多次去影相，咁就啱啱就見到呢架電車，就俾我影咗相。個電車嘅廣告咧就係香港回歸10週年紀念嘅，咁所以咧就覺得呢個情景10週年回歸電車，再加呢個和昌大額嘅建築物咧，我覺得就做出嚟會好有意思咯。
Ever since his first creation, Tony Lai has been hooked on miniature models. Colourful neon signs, tenement buildings, pontoons moored by the shore, long retired train carriages. Thanks to Lai's work, these vanished scenes have reappeared in front of people's eyes. With the mountain base of the squatter village model complete, the next step is to make its huts, starting with their supporting frames. Lai uses a wooden board cut into miniature beams, which are glued together. He then uses more wooden boards to make the floors and walls of a hut, cutting out spaces for doors and windows. Once they've been glued to the supporting frame, the basic structure of the hut is done. Lacking a real-life Mount Davis squatter hut to refer to, Lai isn't too sure about what material to use for his model's tin exterior. In his spare time, Lai likes to go hiking with friends in the Hong Kong countryside. He's heard about a deserted village there, with remains of tin houses. Today he'll go and look, to see what inspiration he can take away.
Wow! Wow! 呢間屋個頂都係鐵皮喎，哇！有賊喎，小心啲啊！
哇，有熱力㗎喎，
係喎，望望，哇，好夠下喎，哇！03年喎，2003年4月。
佢06年都喺度住喎。
06年，10年前啦，真係。
哇！有個廚房喺度㗎嘛？
係喎，4個灶頭啊有。哇！燒咩咧？佢呢啲？
我諗燒柴啦呢度。
哇！呢個真係好揾唔翻㗎啦！呢啲真係。呢個仲有一間房喎，好舊嘅相啊喂！仲有個神台喎，哇！好舊嘅生活照喎，
辦幾次喎？
哇！我諗都有60、70年代。哇！
有個電視框喎，攞嚟睇下先啊！
輕觸式電子感應，
喂，睇緊電視啊？
七幾年都係用呢只。
依個應該係選台啦。
係啊，好似收音機咁擰咯。以前冇自動追台噶嘛。
哇！依個應該大細聲啦。
呢個開關。
哇！鐵皮屋喎。
係啊。
裏邊就木，外邊包鐵皮喎。
佢仲要係揾啲木嚟撐起，
真係似摩星嶺以前嗰啲鐵皮屋喎。
Abandoned villages like this have provided both materials and inspiration for Tony Lai's work. Now, it's time to make the metal exterior.
啲木方嗰度啦。
其實喺偶然之中咧，就行過超級市場就揾到嗰啲石子盤，咁我就覺得佢非常之接近呢個真實嘅鐵皮屋嘅鐵皮啦。咁所以咧就買咗翻去咧，就再做一個模，壓翻嗰個波浪紋出嚟咯。
To make the tin sheet for the model's exterior walls, the edge of the tin foil tray has to be removed. Then the bottom is pressed flat. Afterwards, with a mould to press in waves, the tin foil acquires the look of corrugated iron.
咁佢嘅質感、個厚度同埋嗰個柔軟度咧，都非常之適合我哋去做呢個鐵皮。
The model tin foil is then cut into pieces and glued to the surface of the model hut. With the metal facade complete, the hut's windows are next. Lai draws a window frame on 1 millimeter thick plastic and cuts out its shape. Once the window frame has been assembled, it's spray painted green and allowed to dry. Next, clear plastic pieces are glued to the window frame as glass. Finally, the window is decorated and installed in the hut. After the windows have been installed, the floors and railings of the house need to be painted. Miniature LED lights are then attached to the balcony. Now the whole structure of the model hut is complete. With Hong Kong's older buildings constantly being pulled down to make way for ever taller skyscrapers, traces of the old city are hard to find. The Heritage of May Ho House Museum in Shek Kip Mei is one way to see how people lived in the city in the 1960s and 1970s. Tony Lai's parents weren't wealthy. He grew up in public housing. Recording the museum's displays is another way to find ideas for his miniature world. The last step to making his model is aging treatment. Carefully added dabs of paint, particularly at the seams, can simulate how the corrugated metal of the hut's exterior has weathered and corroded over time.
舊化係有難度嘅。咁開頭嗰個時候咧，我完全唔會識去做舊化嘅，自己去鑽研啊，點樣去上色啊，點樣去上生鏽顏色啊，點樣做啲塵埃出嚟啊，咁啊試咗好多次，咁啊不斷係咁做，不斷係咁做，咁就越做就越似，咁就開始就上咗癮，做舊化上咗癮啦。
The aging treatment of the roof involves firstly spraying with black paint, followed by a layer of mortar to simulate accumulated dust on the roof.
呢個咧就係砂漿，因為啲屋頂咧通常都係鋪咗啲瀝青嘅，所以咧就要加啲砂漿做翻啲凹凸感覺落去咯。
Finally, colours are added to the lights on the roof. The detached hut has now been finished.
嗱，我哋以前做建築模型嘅時候咧，一般都唔會做到舊化嘅。如果你做咗舊化，你根本唔會有人去買佢嘅樓啊。至於我哋做翻呢個懷舊作品出嚟嘅時候咧，如果加上呢個舊化咧，就會令到嗰個作品咧好生動啊，帶翻你去當年嘅時候嘅感覺。
The streetscapes of the past have disappeared. Hong Kong is in a continuous state of development, with building upwards the best way to house its ever-increasing population. Today, nearly 7.3 million people live in the mountainous territories, 1,104 square kilometres. High-rise blocks have made homes more private. Behind concrete walls and thick curtains, family life is less visible. In addition to making miniature models, Tony Lai also teaches his craft to students. Today's class is about how to arrange furniture in a room.
Hey, Lai. Hey, hello, hello. 又嚟。
食飯未啊？
食咗。又嚟。
最後尾定一個。電視機咧？係喎，電視機。好，電視機。
不如放啲雜誌落去啊！放啲雜誌報紙喺茶幾度啊，睇下會唔會好睇啲。書包放喺邊啊？放喺地下定放喺台面好啊？
書包放喺度啦，好似啱啱放學翻嚟咁。仲有啲水果咧？咦？
唔到手。不如整多架車仔落去，我覺得架車仔好 Q 喎，好襯啊！係啦。咁樣放喺度，好嘛？好啊。OK。哇 ，perfect。開燈。喂 ，OK 喎。好豐富啊！係啊，好豐富啊，Sir。正喎，掂唔掂啊？OK 啊？
OK 啦。
我見到 Tony 啲作品咧，好多係會識喐嘅，譬如電視機會喐啊，風扇會喐啊，咁我覺得好特別。咁我想了解下點解佢會喐嘅咧？咁樣所以就好想去研究下點樣去學咯。咁就中間係會好多樂趣啊！
其實咧最開心咧就係可以咧將自己心裏面咧想做嘅嘢，可以用自己對手一咁呈現出嚟咧，跟住俾人哋睇到之後，哇，覺得好真啊！呢個就係我覺得最開心嘅地方咯。
過來那邊可以給自己放鬆一點，在公司裡面啦，好像老是要不停的跟人家不停的說話，但是在這裡呢就可以有些時候可以靜靜的自己做好一個東西。
Now that the house itself is complete, the next step is to deal with its interior. This is where Lai gets to recreate the home atmosphere he knew as a child. In his miniature world, each piece of furniture is as authentic as possible. Many items are electric devices. The crowd pleaser is the TV, which can play videos and change channels. To make a functioning miniature TV, first, an electronic player is connected to a video display chip. Then the display chip is placed into the model TV set. Lastly, an SD card with content is inserted. The TV can play movies now. In addition to a model's exterior walls and roof, aging treatment needs to be applied to its windows, floors, railings, door locks, and tiles as well. In Tony Lai's miniature models, scenes of life in Hong Kong in the 1960s and 1970s are vividly on display. The final step in making the model is assembly, followed by the placing of external items and human figures engaged in their respective activities. After nearly 100 days and nights of hard work, Tony Lai has recreated the 1970s Mount Davis squatter village as a living community. Some residents are fishing on its cliffs, others are drying clothes on balconies. The model's lights make it extra lifelike, transporting viewers back to a bygone era.
每次做呢個微縮作品嘅時候呢，過程係辛苦嘅，因為要好長時間去做。咁但係當你做完嘅時候呢，嗰個滿足感、成功感呢，就非常之大啦！真係由零開始去做到一件物件出嚟。咁當你完成嗰件作品，你甚至你對住嗰件作品呢，你真係可以望足一日，唔會離開件作品。
Tony Lai's miniature works have been sent to many countries and regions for exhibition. receiving enthusiastic responses from audiences each time.
甚至咧見到好多咧都係揸住拐杖啊，甚至坐輪椅嚟嘅老人家，都會專程走嚟睇我哋嘅展覽，因為佢哋係好想睇翻佢哋過去咗以前嘅一切嘅事物，佢哋都好想去懷緬翻以前嘅嘢咯。雖然製作係好艱辛，但係我哋一見到呢啲情況咧，就會不斷會繼續想製作落去。
咁所以我覺得個意義就係話，我哋係將一個本來唔係中國嘅藝術，但係我哋將佢變成一個好香港地道，同埋係張開咗香港好多本身本土嘅文化、衣食住行啊，透過呢個形式記錄落嚟。因為如果你嚟香港，你都見到香港係一個急速變化嘅城市，啲樓不斷拆咗佢，冇晒咩記錄都冇。咁但係呢啲藝術作品咧，因為香港地方咁細，空間咁細，微藝術細件，剛剛好啱晒香港，就可以將我哋香港好豐富回憶，透過咁細嘅作品就保留落嚟。
At night, the skyline above Victoria Harbour becomes a scintillating light show. Row after row of high-rise buildings dance with colourful beams. Looking down from Victoria Peak, skyscrapers soar heavenwards from the mountainside. Everything looks like a carefully constructed virtual world. Time has stolen much of the character of old Hong Kong. For those prepared to indulge their imagination, however, it can still be found. This is an old-fashioned herbal tea shop in Hong Kong. It's known for 24 flavours of herbal tea.
老細，整杯24味你啊！
好，多謝5蚊。
The owner of the barber shop is running his business.
哥仔，剪頭髮啊？
係啊，洗剪吹。
好啊，過嚟坐啊！
The residents of Mount Davis Squatter Village are living a cramped but authentic life.
衰仔，落嚟食飯啦！
衰婆，落雨啦，收衫啦！發財，我碰。
哎呀，唔好意思啊，我13腰喎。
唉，冇搞錯。係啊。
Time machines that enable us to travel back into the past have yet to be invented. The closest we can get to them, perhaps, is Tony Lai's work. Disappeared villages have been rebuilt. Streetlights and old television sets still flicker. Through his meticulously crafted miniatures, the vanished world of decades ago lives on.